Welcome to Greatness Mindsight. I am Dr. Aisha Al-Sheikh. I'm a medical scientist and researcher turned therapist, coach, mentor, and business entrepreneur. Greatness Mindsight is a podcast that brings you motivational and authentic messages from incredibly inspiring and extraordinary people, where I dive in and deconstruct their mind to explore different aspects of their lives, from entrepreneurship and leadership to motivation, fears, and how they overcame their struggles, tackled their inner demons, and overcame adversity. This show dissects the psychology behind their successes to help you discover and unlock your inner potential and give the most effective tips, advice, and lessons that you can emulate or apply in your own life, especially if you are just starting your entrepreneurial journey. Each week, I bring you an inspiring and extraordinary person, so keep yourself updated with the latest episodes by subscribing now to this podcast. You are fully responsible for your life. Are you willing to reinvent yourself and change for things around you to change or not? Break away from the mold of what is expected. It's only when you do that you will really find your own truth. By Moneton. This is episode 3. In this episode, I will dive into the mind of this amazing, unique, and extraordinary guest. His name is Moneton, and he is an entrepreneur, business owner, co-founder of Beyond Entrepreneurs, investment mentor, international investor in emerging trends and markets, and has multiple 8-figure investment deals in Colombia, Papua New Guinea, Uzbekistan, and the US. He's also a former editor of sovereignmen.com, which is a world's leading provider of internationalisation services such as second passports, offshore bank accounts, exclusive private investment deals, etc. Alex's unique upbringing and lifestyle allowed him to live in 10 countries by the age of 24. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode where he will share his stories, tips, habits, mistakes, and valuable advice. Hi, Alex. Hi, it's really lovely having this time with you. That is really valuable to me and also to the audience. Can you just give us a brief intro or brief story about who you are and what got you to where you are?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what shaped my life is that I was born in an international family. My father is French and my mom is Danish. And so I spent my whole youth traveling with my family, and I ended up moving from country to country. So that's been a huge determining factor kind of in me just continuing to move, because by the time I was 17, I had lived in 3 countries, but then I said, I want to keep going. And then for the next 8 years, I lived in another 7 countries, and I studied in China and Singapore and places like that. So that's really been a huge part of my life. But more importantly, I think as well, is that my parents are entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My parents were entrepreneurs. And so I grew up around entrepreneurs, and I grew up with this normal thought that it was totally okay to take a risk to start a business. It wasn't something weird, it was kind of expected, I would say, that I had to become an entrepreneur. And so when I was 19, I started my first business, and that turned out to be relatively successful for what it was at the time. I was a student and I didn't have any money, and then the problem probably is that it became one of my it kind of set my standard for the success that I expected to have in my following businesses, and I didn't really pan out that way. It took me a couple of years before I had another success, and then I took a job after university, working in sales in Papua New Guinea. It's a small island next to Australia. But then after that, I said, I want to go back to being an entrepreneur, and then for the last 5 years, it's just been, building businesses, investing and traveling and kind of discovering, finding mentors who can teach me things and then applying what they teach me and then growing in the process myself.
So when you were 19 years old, what was it that made you take this massive decision, massive action to create your first business? Because that's what a lot of people are. And I know you grew up, as you said, you grew up in a risk-taking family. But then what was it that just told you told yourself, you know what, I'm just going to go for it? What was that incident or that, I don't know, what was that?
Yeah, so actually, when I started my first year of university, I thought it was great, but I actually organized all the starting parties because I realized that a lot of people show up at university. I was 18, I didn't know anybody, and so I said, well, I'm going to put together a Facebook group, put together a couple of people, and organize a small party. And then I spent the first couple of months at uni actually organizing a lot of parties, and it turned out to be really fun. But in my second year, I saw that nobody was organizing parties for the first year students, and I said, you know what, this is not normal, because when you start as a first year, you don't know anyone. And so I thought, you need somebody who puts something together. And I said, I'm going to organize a party for all the first year students because I thought it was the right thing to do. I just thought there was an opportunity to do something, and it didn't really take, it wasn't difficult. And I threw a party and 300 people came, and that's how my business started. My first business was an events business, and I threw more parties after that. And ultimately, I think we have, it still goes on today, by the way, the business, and we have like 3,000 people to some of our events. But what really made me take that risk was saying, like, there is a need for it. I can see it. And I know people have really benefited from it. It wasn't like an idea that I just thought that, maybe someone's going to buy into. There was a clear need. And everybody likes to party. It's kind of a no-brainer to sell that to somebody.
Wow, that's amazing. It's a good lesson that's taken. Like, if you see an opportunity, just go for it. That's a good takeaway from this.
That's the thing. And just to kind of like, there's a lot of people who see opportunities and who feel like, well, I'm not qualified. I don't know. Just go for it. If you just keep going consistently at it, at some point you're going to land something that you're going to figure out. Like, you're going to land a lot of things that you might not figure out, but at some point you're going to figure it out.
Wow, that's amazing. If you, now looking back at your career, I know you are a serial investor, you invest in a lot of things, and you've got a lot of experience in that. If you had the chance to start your career over, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
So I really got my first mentor when I was like 24. I'm 25. And I paid, which was a lot of money for me at the time, $5,000 to be in the same room as him. And it was a really big investment for me. If I were to do it all over again, I would do that when I was 18. Because he really kicked off my entire, like what I would call my more serious business and investing career. Because I learned from somebody who has achieved what I want to achieve. And I think that's what I would do from the beginning again. I think a lot of people who start, and this is how I started, like, oh, I want to achieve stuff, but I'm not really sure what. And so you just kind of go from thing to thing to thing, not really knowing what you're doing. But if you can take somebody who's accomplished what you want to accomplish and then learn everything you can from them and then apply that, then you know that, you're going to get their result. It's, success leaves clues. And I know that this is something you're familiar with, but I think that's what I would do differently. I would get a mentor much earlier, and I would really apply everything.
Wow, that's very insightful. I think that's a very good point. I wish I did that when I was younger. Definitely. This is something I wish I would have done. When you have self-doubt, a lot of people, when they start businesses or even investing in things, you'll always have self-doubt. Mm-hmm. How do you actually, when self-doubt creeps in, okay, how do you actually deal with it? And what would be, for example, something that would motivate you to just go for it? Yeah,
so it's really interesting. I'll tell you an example. I think the most important way to overcome self-doubt is when you realize that it's about more than yourself. If you do something for somebody that is more than just you, you're going to overcome that. And I'll give you an example. So I haven't really had social media much until 2 years ago. I got a Facebook account, I got Instagram, I got all these things. But then a couple months ago, I learned about this thing called TikTok. And I'm almost 30 years old, and I'm in investing in business and finance. And I thought this is for kids. This is. I thought it was stupid, which is my initial reaction. And then I thought, I can ignore it, or I can try to use it to do something that actually helps people. That the moment that I overcome this, well, it's going to make me look stupid if I go on TikTok, because it's about me, right? The moment I get over that and say, well, I'm actually going to use TikTok as a means to help people and provide valuable information, then that immediately like completely cuts away the doubt, because it no longer becomes about me. And it's worked really well so far, actually, on even just on TikTok. I mean, it's just a random example, but I think tapping into the power of something bigger than you is the best way to kill self-doubt for me, because you realize that you have to do it. Like, I have an obligation to pass on my knowledge. I have an obligation to help. And if I don't, then I'm just being really selfish. If I let self-doubt, paralyze me from helping other people, then what kind of person would that make me? I think an incredibly selfish person. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I go through that all the time, but it really helps me push through it.
I really love that advice, and I will take it on myself, because this is something that is really a lot of people struggling with, including myself, especially when you're going into an unknown territory, something you've never done before. You always have that fear of the unknown, what if and all that. But sometimes in life is all about taking risk, but having the right decision making would help along the way. But thinking in a way that this is bigger than you, it's not just about you. I love that, and I think a lot of people should take that on as well.
And also, just to kind of finish on that, I think the reason a lot of people don't do a lot of things is because they're afraid of how they're going to look. Right? So the reason we don't start a business might be because other people are going to say that it's stupid, like we're going to fail, or if we do fail, which is going to happen. Like, I failed at a lot of businesses. Like, still today, some of my university friends are telling me, Alex, you remember that watch business you had in university in second year, and it was a terrible failure? And yeah, I remember that. But it's part of my successes, because ultimately it's, I started maybe like 12 businesses, and 3 have worked out okay. And that's, but we are so afraid of what other people think of us, that we let that absorb us into thinking that we're so important, because honestly, no one really cares about us. People only care about themselves. And once you kind of push through that and say, well, I'm doing this for other people, like, I don't care if I look ridiculous, then I think it really helps.
Yes, a lot of people are afraid of, probably most of them are fear of judgment, or fear of being rejected, and that's a good point you've raised as well. And I always tell people that failure is part of the success process. It's learning. It's a lesson you've learned. There's no such thing as failure. So having taken that and you put it in your story, yes, you failed, but then that what made you successful in a way, because you've learned from it. Since we're talking about fears, I want to ask you, what is your greatest fear and how do you overcome it?
My greatest fear is, it's actually funny because I thought about this question a lot, is not fulfilling my potential. I think my biggest fear is being comfortable, because I've experienced it in the past. I've experienced, financial abundance is maybe not the right word, but financial comfort to the level that I don't have to push myself for money, but I have to push myself for really realizing my true potential. I have to push myself to really help people. And I think unfulfilled potential is one of the biggest tragedies of mankind, because we fall prey to this idea that we need to be comfortable or happy. And I agree that happy is important. And this is maybe a kind of a tangent, but I do believe that we all have a dream. And that as long as we know that we've given up on it, I think it kills part of our soul. We feel like, well, I gave up on that. Let me give up on everything else. And that's my biggest fear is not fulfilling my full potential and feeling comfortable and giving up. And looking back when I'm, I don't know how old you and I are going to get. Probably, maybe there's technology that makes live to 150. It doesn't matter. But when, like, being really old and looking back and saying, wow, I wish I had done more. I wish I had done what I really thought I was capable of doing. I don't want to be in that situation.
I like the idea of, I think I have similar fears to what you're saying, not being able to fulfill my potential. And what if, not many people think that way, unfortunately, because they don't know what is their full potential is, or so they don't have that kind of fear yet. But people who probably reached and done a lot in their life, they realize there is more to give, there is more to explore, and I think that when things comes in, and that kind of fear probably will come in.
And this is like, I feel like everybody who is when you're 12 years old or 14 years old, everybody has a dream. Nobody ever dreams of like, oh, I want to be unemployed and take a government check. Like, that's really what that's my ultimate dream. like you want to become an astronaut or a chef or a firefighter, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what your dream is, but and it's just something that somebody taught me was he asked me, when you were 14, what did you want to do? And I think it's an important question to kind of look back and say, there was a time I had a dream, but then between that dream and maybe, let's say, today as an adult, I filled my head with all sorts of insecurities and doubts and what other people think, other people's teachings, you can't do this, you should be this, all these like conditioning that is just like all these layers that you put on top of yourself and say, well, you know what? I shouldn't pursue my dream because I have to be realistic, or I have to be a grown up, or I have to be all these things that are just really crap. You just want to peel off the layers of the onion and blossom. That's kind of the best word I can find for it.
Yeah. I know what's happening now with the virus situation and everything. What difficulties are you actually truly facing at the moment? Did you have difficulties in some of the investment you've had, some of the businesses, and how are you actually coping personally with it, mentally and emotionally? Because a lot of people are struggling with this, and a lot of people lost a lot of businesses, some of their investments and stuff. So how do you look at it, and have you ever faced any? And if so, then how are you coping with it?
Yeah, so I've actually had probably the biggest loss of my life in terms of career in March. On my birthday, I lost $150,000 in a day because one of the companies that I had been invested in for many years was actually accused of being a fraud. I obviously didn't know this. And I invested in the business when it was worth like $20 million, and then it became worth $1 billion ultimately. So it became a really successful investment. And I was sure that the business plan was right. I knew the team. I had executed. I had gone to visit. I was so sure that I was going to be right. I was so sure that this was going to be a massive, massive success, and it had already been a success. And then one day, it was my birthday, and I'm sitting on the chair. It was not that long ago, here a couple of months ago, and
happy birthday! Belated
yeah, thank you. Exactly, that's the thing. And I get these news that the company, might have been a fraud, and in one day, just the share price collapsed like 60%, and then it just kept collapsing. It was the most difficult moment I'd had in years, for sure. And actually, my wife came up to me when I learned the news, because I was sitting in front of my computer, and she just said to me, "We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." And then the next thing she said to me is, before anything else, write down everything you just learned from this loss. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that I've learned to do, and that she's encouraging me to do, is to learn from your mistakes. Because there's a lot of things in your life that you can't control, but there's some that you can control. Like in this investment, I could have done better due diligence. I could have, I showed up in Colombia because it was a Colombian investment. I showed up to Colombia 5 years ago, but I could have showed up again. I trusted some people maybe too much. But more importantly, I think there is a gem inside every mistake, and this is something that Ray Dalio talks a lot about, and maybe for some of your listeners who are not familiar with Ray Dalio, he's the most successful hedge fund manager in history, and he talks about how inside every mistake there's a gem. Your job is, when you make a mistake, is to uncover that gem. A mistake is not a problem as long as you can uncover the gem, as long as you can make something of it, because it will allow you to not make the same mistake in the future. But it was a huge loss, financially, but emotionally, because I was so sure that I was right, but yet I was so wrong. And it taught me humility. It taught me also humility. And this is something I still ponder, every day a little bit now. It's been 3 months, is how can I make sure that I'm right next time? Or what can I do to make sure that even if I'm wrong, it doesn't shoot me it doesn't shoot me or cut me off at my knees. That's what I mean to say. That's the most difficult thing I've been through recently, and learning again. Something that one of my mentors told me is, and this is maybe super cliche, but focus on what you can control, and then don't focus too much on what you can't control. Like I used to, like 5 years ago, I would read the news all the time and be like, oh my God, there's so many things happening in the world. I don't do that anymore because I can't control these events. What I can control is how I react to it, how I invest accordingly, how I live my life. And I think that helps reduce a lot of stress.
There's so much value of what you just said, and I really appreciate sharing that with us. I think what your wife did was very wise.
Yeah.
When someone is in a panic mode, and probably a lot of people make decisions when they're in that panic mode, and they end up just making some of the situation worse. So having that clarity and having that someone just ground you and just tell you, like, you know what, this is what you need to do next. That is something really, really valuable. People probably want to seek and have in their life.
And also the ability to think about what is the worst that is really going to happen as a result of this. Like for us, it was a financial loss for sure, but we're still healthy, we're still alive, we're still, we can still continue. All the knowledge, I just became so much wiser as a result of this thing that now I can go out and show other people how not to do it, or I can go out and become a much better investor. So it's really about like, how can you make the most of this going forward? Because it really, it's a beautiful lesson if you look at it in that way.
Throughout this whole chaos things, how do you usually find your inner peace?
So I do. I actually have.
Some people don't.
Yeah, no. I actually have quite an elaborate morning routine. Okay. Because I get up at 5:30, and so I work at the very beginning just because it's when my head's clear. So I work for 2 hours, and then I go to the beach. And I do breathing technique. I do a breathing program by Wim Hof. Maybe you've heard of him, but maybe
I do his breathing technique too.
Oh, okay, there you go. And I feel like I do the breathing, and then I stretch, and then I swim. I found that doing a combination of those things allows me to just be so much more calm and approach the day with focus and serenity, and it allows me to kind of take a distance. I don't know exactly why that is. I think doing exercise really helps just get my body rid of stress, and I found of all the exercises that I do, swimming is the best for me by far. I come out of swimming and I feel like $1 million, because and especially in the cold ocean, like my body just feels amazing. I'm not stressed. I feel like Wim Hof kind of grounds me and makes me present to my own body, because when you're breathing, and maybe for those of you who don't know what it is, you essentially hyperventilate to some extent, and then you hold your breath. And I just feel like it makes me so present to my body. I think it's really powerful. So that's how I find peace, I think. And then I disconnect at 7:30. After 7:30, I have no phones. Nothing. I don't want to deal with it. Because it allows me. I go to bed at 9:30, so it allows me to kind of take 2 hours before I go to bed, where I don't have to worry about anything. And then, I take a Sunday completely off. I don't do any work on Sunday. I work on Saturdays, but I don't work on Sundays, and that allows me to find peace.
That's a good piece of advice, because a lot of people who are workaholic, I'm guilty of that sometimes, that I don't take days off, and that can actually takes a drain, especially if you're starting up. It can put a strain on your well-being in a way. And I've started I'm going to take a day off for myself or two, just relax like everybody else, and then recharge and do that. But that's a good morning routine. I tend to do Wim Hof's breathing method, especially in the morning with the meditation and stuff, because it keeps my mind it's a good start to your day. So thanks for sharing that tip as well to the listeners who are actually wanting to explore that. I think you should go check out Wim Hof's method.
And actually, there's something here as well that really helps is don't work too long. So a lot of people think that they have to work continuously I don't really work for more than 2 hours at a time. So I work 2 hours in the morning, and then I work again from 10 to essentially 1, and then from 2 to 5, and then from 6 to 7. I always take breaks, and I think a lot of people don't take enough breaks because they think they're supposed to be busy. They're supposed to but you're so much more productive when you work with a clear mind. If I can get 8 hours of focused work in during the day, I can even get a lot done. But if I'm sitting there 12 hours a day, staring at my screen, feel like I should do something, it doesn't get me anywhere. And taking days off is huge. I mean, taking days off and doing exercise I think are massive. Anybody should do that.
I totally agree with you on that one. In your opinion, I'm sure you have been in a position of being a leader to your either employees or people you had or clients, whatever it is. What do you think are the number one quality of a good leader?
I think it's the ability to listen. I think, when I've had, in my first job, I had 30 employees, and in one of my businesses, I had about the same. And I've always found that if you can listen to what people really want, then you can put them in a situation where they're successful. Like your job as a leader of a company or a business, is to make your employees successful. That's your job. At least that's what I believe your job is. And I think if you listen to what they really want, and if you listen to, what their desires are and how they're performing, how they're feeling, I think that goes a long way. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, this idea that once you're at the top, like you have to like dictate it. And some people work like that. And some people maybe work really well that way. It just hasn't really worked for me. I feel like empathy empathy and kindness are really underrated. I think in leadership, I'm not saying that you have to let yourself get walked all over, but for example, I just hired a new assistant, and the first thing was understanding like what is her objective, what does she want out of the next couple of years, out of her life, and how can I help her achieve that within my organization? And I think that's really powerful. That's I think I also heard this somewhere that the ability to speak last, generally speaking, is going to be an advantage for you where you are going to allow the people you work with to feel heard, and not imposing so much, but really letting them speak, and then you develop your mind, or you speak your mind as a result of what they've said, and very last.
I think it was Simon Sinek, wasn't it, who probably said something like that? It's
possible. I've listened to a lot of his stuff and over the years, and it's very possible. But I think the ability to listen is really key.
I totally agree with you on that one. I've heard him a lot say that, and I try to, as much as I can, implement this in my life and the people I am with. But having the employee coming from a position of power, a lot of people take advantage of that, and some people. I'm not sure if you've struggled with this or not. Many people do. Like, how do you, for example, if you had someone in a position of power and they are planning, like their aim is to fail you, or actually was difficult. Have you ever had experienced that? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I have. I've had to fire people in the past. I think, generally speaking, I believe most people are good. I think sometimes good people do bad things because they get into situations that trigger them or that stir them in a conditioning that there's just not, maybe the appropriate reaction. But I have had people take advantage of me. I've had people, try to walk all over me, even though I was, in charge. I think the first thing is kind of understanding why that's happening. And I really do believe in the idea that you should, hire slow but fire fast. If you realize that somebody doesn't align with your values and your way of working, then they should just go. I feel like most people I've worked with align with me, but sometimes people don't, and I just let them go. Because I don't want to work with people like that. Have you
had, though, someone above you before in your past jobs and stuff like that? Have you had someone difficult as well, or not?
I have. Yes, I absolutely have. How have I dealt with that? I put up with it so I realize what I think is, what is my benefit for being here? And what is what am I trying to get out of putting up with this kind of behavior? So I'm not saying you have to put up with stuff for the sake of it, but you might be saying, like, my mentor, sometimes wasn't the easiest to work with. And I hope he doesn't watch this, but it doesn't matter. But I feel like, sometimes I had to put up with some behavior because I know that I benefit. The problem arises when you feel like, okay, they're doing something that I don't like, but I don't get anything out of it. I'm just putting up with it because I have to, but you never have to do anything. Like I worked with my mentor directly because I wanted to learn, not because nobody's forcing me into anything. So I think you need to put things in perspective and understand why you're doing the things you're doing, and is that worth, whatever. Some things are difficult, like going to the military is a great exercise and discipline, but it's also hard. Like, it's, if you want to develop tough skin like that. I'm sure you have to go through some tough things. So, you can't get the discipline of being in the military without going through the actual hard work. I've never been in the military, but I know from friends who have, but it applies to anything, It's like people, and I'll finish here, but it's like people who want to learn what risk management is like in investing without ever losing a lot of money. It's just not going to happen, because you're not going to know how to manage your emotions until you actually put up with having, your emotions like a roller coaster all over the place. So what is it you're trying to get out of it? What's your objective? And is it worth that objective?
I want to ask you as well, if throughout your whole life, you've been through experiences, and some of them, what you just mentioned, and for someone, like, what would be your unique 3 top habit that improved your life significantly, taking all these experiences and moving on with your life to become a better version of yourself? So what are the top 3 habits that you developed that significantly improved your life in your productivity or whatever it is, whether it's personal or like business wise?
That's a good one, because I think there are a lot of things that have changed. I would say, the first one was getting a mentor. I feel like knowing where you are going is going to change your life. For example, I have an objective for every week. I have an objective for every month. I have an objective for every quarter and for every year. Because if I don't know where I'm going, I'm never going to go anywhere. And I think a lot of people just kind of, let's say they'll start a business and they'll say, well, I want this to create freedom for me. Okay, what does freedom mean? This is where most people stop. They stop at the freedom part, but they don't actually define what freedom is. Well, what's that in actual income? What's that in actual, time? What does your day look like? So that is the goal that you want. You need to define your goal. And then next, you need to define your process goals, which is what actually needs to happen for that to arrive. Like if you need to, let's say you want to generate $100,000 a year, what needs to happen? Maybe you need to make 20 sales calls a day. Great. So that's your goal for the day. And I think that is really the number one habit, is having goals, like really specific goals, and then reverse engineering it so that I always know what I'm doing. And that kind of brings me, I would say, to number 2 is scheduling my days. Like I don't have a moment in a day where I don't know what I'm doing. I never have a time where I'm like, what do I do now? Never, because I always know what I'm going to do. And I think that's really also, I never get bored because I don't have boredom. I take time to schedule my day from 5:30 to 9:30 is completely scheduled. Like my calendar is just fully blocked out. And that's really helped me achieve my goals much, much faster. I would say that's probably number 2. And then, find a mentor who can teach you, schedule your days. And number 3, I would say, maybe I don't want people to interpret this the wrong way, but I would say don't over-obsess over something that has to happen right now. Like you have to learn to be patient and put in the effort. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are really impatient. They want everything to happen now. And so they don't put in the long game. They don't put in the work that is required for them to achieve in the long run. This is a mistake I've made many times in the past, but the moment I stopped doing it, it's really changed things around for me. Is understanding that if you know where you're going with a specific goal, it's going to take me 3 years maybe to achieve the goal that I want. Well, I know exactly how long it's going to take me roughly because I have it. It's kind of scheduled out. And that doesn't mean you can't change it along the way. But you have to also be patient. I
love the idea so the habit number 1 is getting a mentor, which is a good thing to have as a habit, something regularly. Exactly. Second one is about scheduling your day.
Knowing exactly what you want to get out of every day. Yeah. And this can be work, but I also schedule intimate time with my wife. I also schedule, and this is not to be unromantic, but it's just that if it doesn't get scheduled, then it doesn't get done. A lot of people believe in spontaneity. I'm sorry I cut you off, Aisha, but
no, it's all right.
But a lot of people believe that everything has to be so spontaneous, and some things are spontaneous on Sundays because we don't schedule Sunday, but I also believe that you have to make time for things that you really want to happen. Like I have a lunch date scheduled with my wife today, because it's just, we need to do that in order for things to happen. And so I don't leave things up to chance. I don't leave the special moment up to chance. Like I schedule to take my wife out to the beach and look at the ocean. But it could be anything, right? Maybe you want to exercise or go to the movies. Like, schedule it, because then you'll get it done. So that's habit number 2. Yeah, sorry. And then habit number 3 is being patient. And understanding that good things can take time, but also don't be too patient, because a lot of people get caught up in planning. And I think planning is good, but over planning, you have to execute, like plan for a week and execute for like right away, So that's kind of like finding that balance of patience and execution.
Since you had like a lot of, as you said, your tip number 1 is getting mentors, and I'm sure you've had plenty, not just from mentors, but maybe in life generally. What was the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, that's a difficult one. The best advice I've ever received.
That really made a big impact in your life.
Well, I mean, I've already talked about this idea of having a goal, which I think is fundamental. Like, once you have a goal, your life will change fundamentally. But the second thing, I would learn to be grateful. I think something I actually discovered through going through the whole Tony Robbins program was the importance of gratitude. I was always kind of caught up in, I have to do like a million things all the time, without actually taking the time to be grateful and present. And I'm not saying that they're totally interchangeable, presence and gratitude, but I think learning to really be grateful for what you have is probably one of the best things I've ever learned. And actually, I'll add one that I really think everybody should apply, and that is that if you don't feel good, you need to move your body. And this is something Tony Robbins talks a lot about that's really benefited me, is whenever you feel like you don't want to do something, just move. He talks about the triad of changing your state, physiology, language, and focus. And I just feel like if, you can never have a good conversation about your goals and ambitions if you're like slouching in a chair. Like, get up, move, do some exercise and get that blood flowing, because you're going to feel so different. I
totally agree with you on that advice. I think that was one of the best advice ever given in terms, and especially gratitude. Gratitude gives meaning to our lives, because otherwise it's all go, and then you'll just lose the meaning of why you're doing what you're doing. And stopping and having that moment of just saying, I'm grateful for what I have, where I am right now, how far I've come. So if you could choose one book as a mandatory read for all high school students, and which book would you choose? Like, if imagine yourself being a high school student and somebody gave you this magical book that can change your life, and something you probably read, what would that be? What would be your best advice to give this one book to these students?
I'm very torn. Can I give 2?
You can give 2.
Okay, all right. So I would say there's probably 2 things. One is a book, one is a program that have really changed my life. The first one was I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 19, and I know a lot of people mentioned this book, but there's a reason for it. A lot of people don't like it because it's like salesy, and for those of you who don't know what it's about, it's essentially key lessons about building wealth and investing and personal finance. But if you actually take the lessons and apply them, it can truly change your financial life. I can speak from experience. It really, really has made a difference in my life massively. And I would really say that's the number one thing that anybody should read. I think, and I'm talking about finance and investing because maybe there are better books on other topics, but the number one thing that changed my life, of course, it's actually going to UPW of Tony Robbins. That changed my life probably more than anything I've ever done. And I would recommend anybody can get the Tony Robbins has a course called The Ultimate Edge. It's a short course. I'm doing like this because it also comes with a little box.
Yeah.
But it comes with a little box. It's $200 or $150 on his website. I listened to this probably on repeat for 6 months, over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I think it's one of the best, literally the best programs out there in the world today that is anybody can access. I've given it to friends, family. I've given it to anybody I can think of. So that's really, it's one book and one program. Do both.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I haven't done The Ultimate Edge
Okay, it is so good.
But it's on my to-do list now.
You know, like once you've done some of the Tony Robbins thing, it's so great to have the reminder every single morning, to have Tony like in your ears being like, remember that your emotions are this. And I'm just like, wow, it's so powerful, because sometimes it's so easy to forget.
It's a good habit to have.
Absolutely.
I know throughout the day, you've got some questions, in your head, internal dialogue. What questions do you often ask yourself?
I think I ask myself a lot, am I doing it right? Am I, one of the things I'm most obsessed with, particularly for the last couple of years, has been, as I got busier and busier, is understanding where is every unit of time best spent. Like I told you, I schedule my entire days, and in everything that I do now, is I try to figure out how I can get the most out of what I do. And so I always ask myself, is this really the best that I can do? For example, like I'll give you an example. I used to run really like long runs. And then I realized that I can get a similar like feeling in my body, or even better, by swimming half an hour than I can running an hour. So I would actually rather swim, because I just feel like that's a better use of my time. For example, like right now I'm trying to develop social media strategy for one of my businesses, and right now, for example, one of my questions is, where is it best for me to spend my time on which social media platform? I've been on TikTok for like a week, and I've gotten 6,000 followers just by giving. And I realized that one of my videos has been seen 100,000 times, and I realized
what was that video?
You can check it out. It's about acquiring multiple citizenships, but the point is that you need to think about, where is your reach the biggest? Because a lot of people who have come before you have done things a certain way, but are where they are today because they were pioneers, or because they did things differently at the time. Like I posted videos on YouTube that have gotten very few views, and I've posted on TikTok, and I've gotten 100,000 views. So where is my time best spent? And that's a question I ask myself constantly.
That is an amazing question, and I'm gonna take that, steal it from you, and apply it on myself as well. I think that's a brilliant one.
Time is something that we can't get back, and I think it's easy to fall into what other people are doing, but ultimately you have to find out what works for you and where you can maximize your impact. And I think for example, audio right now, I'm realizing like audio programs like podcasts is great, is amazing, because there's a lot of people moving over to audio. So that's a great way to impact and influence. But other ways are just maybe less effective. So yes, it's just an example. But
no, that's a brilliant question, the way you questioned yourself, because I think that's an important question to ask yourself. And a lot of us actually not asking these questions. These are the questions that matter most. And I really appreciate you sharing that.
Pleasure.
What is the biggest waste in your mind? What's the biggest waste of human potential?
What's the biggest waste of human potential? I think the fact that you can be bored today is, I think it baffles me. Like, I have no idea how you can be bored when you have even an ounce of ambition or dream. And I think one of the biggest wastes of human potential is just that people don't actually they're not willing to go out and do what it takes to get what they want, because they've settled into comfort and judgment of other people. And I think I feel like we're all capable of so many different things. And not everybody's going to become a billionaire or Tony Robbins or something, but a lot of people think that they have to be, instead of just being the best them. I think really owning your story, owning who you are, and going out and making happen what you want to happen is just fundamental to having a fulfilling life. I think I'm not saying that I know much about it, because I wouldn't even say I'm that old, but I feel like just living my truth and what I really want to do without judgment or without caring what I think is like fundamentally changed my life as well. So if you're bored right now, something needs to change in your life, because you have everything at your disposal. Particularly if you live in a Western country, you have access to internet, and you can learn anything, create anything, reach anybody, and you're bored. I just don't see how that happens. I think it's a huge waste of time. And actually, I also think just for men, young men who are bored, usually tend to create trouble. Young men without a path. And maybe the same is true for women. I don't know enough young women, but I have a scholarship program where I teach younger men. So I'm just a little more familiar with younger men. Is that when you're bored and you're young, and I've been young myself, it's a recipe for disaster. So not having a goal, not having an objective, it's just like you just wander around and you do stupid things. And some people end up doing drugs, some people end up violent, some people end up, just doing nothing.
I think that's a wise statement you just made. Being bored and being young and not actually acting on the right way of developing yourself and growing, that's a big waste of your own potential and not discovering who you are, who you want to be in the world. What in your opinion, what is the number one solution to healing the world?
I think if we could accept that others are different and love them for it, I think that would change a lot of things. I think we all want to impose our way on other people, and I've seen that in I've traveled quite a lot, and I've lived in different countries, but I also see it in my relationship with my wife. We each want to impose our way because that's who we are on the other person, and it's something that we all do to one another. I think we could heal the world if we understood one another more carefully and actually accepted them for being different. The fact that somebody's a Muslim, somebody's a Christian, it doesn't really matter to me if there's anybody else who believes whatever they want. It's none of my business, But I think when we start imposing our ways on other people, I think that's but whether they're economic, religious, political, I think that's really when we go wrong. I don't know if that really takes into account the environment so much, but maybe it would make us more understanding of the fact that we're actually part of something much bigger than just us. I
totally agree with you on that one. How do you want to change the world? What is your ultimate vision as a human being on Earth? And what legacy do you want to leave behind? I know these are three questions, but all amounts to one answer.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest tragedies I see is that people don't learn the right things, and as a result, they don't do the right things. This is something I felt pray for because I came from a traditional white family. We're all educated. We go to school, and we whatever. But I feel like there is what I really want to do is I really want to give tools to people who don't have access to them. I feel like, for example, you and I are lucky. We could attend conferences that cost thousands of dollars, but there's a lot of people who can't. I have access to financial education because I've gone to the great schools and I've read all the books and so on, but a lot of people don't. And I think unfortunately we tend to repeat a lot of the same mistakes. I think we just do bad things and we don't live up to our own potential because we don't really know how to get it. We don't really know what to do. And I want to do my part in changing that. I don't know which part of that question that answered because I think I forgot the first part of the question.
How do you want to change the world, and what's your ultimate vision as a human being?
I see ultimately a place where I've always believed in the democratization of education. I believe everybody should have access to the best information. And although everybody has access to the internet, I still believe that there is a huge discrepancy between the kind of information that somebody who has a regular internet connection has and the information that somebody who goes and pays tens of thousands of dollars for a seminar has as well. But they can really influence the quality of your life. And I think that's really where I want to make a dent. I want to bring information to people that most people don't have. And right now I'm focusing on financial education because that's where I'm starting and that's what I know really well. But I realized the more I dig into it that there's just so much bad stuff out there. It's unbelievable. And the problem is because anybody can teach today, there's so much bad teaching too. And it breaks my heart actually to see some of these things. And I'm just getting started, because ultimately I want to bring more good information out to more people so they can actually personally take control of their lives. And I think this kind of comes to the second part, which is that I think we live in a world where we have pushed away responsibility to other people for our own problems and for the problems of the world. Like global warming is somebody else's problem, right? Somebody else is supposed to solve it, not me. my future is somebody else's problem, the government's problem, it's the education system. It's always somebody else's problem. But I think if we take full responsibility for where we are, my situation, my financial situation, my marriage, the world, the fact that the oceans are polluted, like that's my problem. It's not somebody else's problem. And what I think is it's gotten so easy to talk about it, or even for some people like protest, which I think it's not. I'm not saying protesting is bad, but when it becomes your only tool, I think you ought to do something about it. I have discussions with a lot of people in my office, who say, well, global warming is really bad. And I say, well, great. Well, what are you doing about it? Oh, well, I'm not, well, I don't know. Well, great. Like that's, we're all responsible. And I want to give people responsibility and give them the right tools to take responsibility.
I like that. I really, really like that. We have shared vision anyways. We've got a very similar vision, more about changing potential and influencing the younger generation and changing their perspective and way of looking at life.
Yeah. And I only really bring out the environment because it's something everybody can relate to.
Obviously, yeah.
But I feel like for me, my cause right now is not the environment. It's, education, financial education, because that's where I want to be. But it's this concept of saying you're fully responsible for your own financial future. And I see, I live in France right now, and I see a lot of people protest in the streets for, they want more money. They want to put this, well, I work all the time and I don't have enough money. Well, my way of looking at it is maybe you're doing the wrong work. Are you willing to reinvent yourself? Are you willing to put yourself through difficult, learning? And I'm 30 years old and I got on TikTok. For God's sake, I don't want to be on TikTok, but I am on there because it's what's required of me to build, what I'm trying to build. And so I really want people to get that responsibility and say, hey, I need to change for the world to change.
The thing is, the lack of good questioning, that's what's missing in people's life, because they tend to ask the wrong questions rather than the right questions. Once they start learning about asking the right questions, they will have better life, better answers for themselves, to change themselves and to change the people around them or the world around them. I totally agree with financial education. I think it's number one. This is something I wish I've learned as growing up. And I think there's a big gap for it in the educational system. And I think every student need to learn how to actually financially manage, not just from their parents, but actually get the proper education, the proper way. And I think if you can infiltrate the educational system, that would be a great bonus, rather than them going in a specialty. They want to go into a specific, let's say finance or business, then they will learn more about it. But actually, no, have it as a part of the fundamental, schooling system, even from a younger age, because that's how you start learning how to invest, how to build, create financial freedom for yourself.
Exactly. And it really hurts. Yeah, sorry. And it really hurts me that we learn about geometry in school, but we don't learn how to manage a credit card or how to get a house or how to invest. The world is economic, and whether we like it or not, you live in an economic world, you have to learn how to deal with your finances. And it pains me to see an 18-year-old who's super smart, know nothing about their finances, because I feel like somehow the education system has failed us. Because you come out learning about things that you will never apply. And I work in finance, investing, and so on. There's so many things I learned in school that even why we teach kids information you can just look up on Google nowadays. You don't have to cram everything in your head. You have to learn how to think critically about certain things and how the system works, right? How does the political system work? How does the economic system work? How does science work? All these things. So that pains me, and that's what I want to do something about.
So yeah, that's great. Now your next probably suggested project is to create these programs and sell them to educational systems as a program they can actually incorporate into students' lives. Maybe that's a suggestion anyways. But I would love to have that. I would have loved to have that as a child, or in high school, even at university, just learning about how to do all that. That would be so, so useful. Not actually seeking it after graduation and actually learning about it, because it's a bit late by then, kind of. I come to my last questions for the day. I love chatting to you, Alex. I really had so much value from what you just said.
Appreciate that.
And I think a lot of people also will benefit from what you said, because there was lots of good golden nuggets you just mentioned. My last question to end our interview today is, if you were to leave Earth today, if you were to die today, What are the unique three pieces of knowledge or wisdom from your own life and experiences would you give it to your family or people around you? Three pieces of knowledge or wisdom from your own unique life and experience.
So I can choose to give it to my family or to everybody else. Is that it?
Both. If you give it to family and people, like, because I know you favor family more than people, but like, what would it be just general? Like, you are leaving this earth.
Yeah. So my family is doing pretty well. So I feel like, they have it figured out, but I feel like I would tell people to just trust themselves. I think there is so much information in the world today, which is powerful, but it's also so paralyzing because you never know what to do. There's always somebody telling you what to do and how to do things. And there's always like 1,000 courses on how to do all these things. And I would say, trust yourself, trust your instinct. That's really the first thing that I would leave is like, the same way I was once at a meditation retreat in a forest and the teacher told me, the tree knows how to grow. The flowers know how to grow. The birds know exactly how to migrate. They know what to do inherently. It's instinctive in them. You know how to live a fulfilled life as a human. It's ingrained in you. So trust that. Don't go out and seek it. Just listen to yourself. I think that's really the first thing, because that's really something that served me as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as a fulfilled human being in life. And the second one is, I would say, is don't. I want to call it break the rules, but I really want to say don't follow the herd.
Break the rules, not the laws, as Arnold, he said. Is that what you mean?
Something like that. I would say break away from the mold of what is expected. It's only when you do that you will really find your own truth as a human and with where you want to go. I think the moment you stop and ask yourself, why is everybody doing this? Why is everybody doing this? Does this make sense really for me? Like, I went to business school. Looking back, would I do all over? Maybe not. I would maybe do something different. And I feel like a lot of people do things because it's what expected, and they'll go to school, get a college degree, and go into a career because it's what I have to do, right? I have to earn my living in a big city and pay, horrendous rent and have this job that pays for rent. But that's a stupid cycle to be in. Like, why not just do something different? I would say, just break the mold and don't follow the herd. That's really what I would give to people. Yeah, just love. People are good. That's really the last thing I would say is people are good. We have layers of conditioning that make us do strange things sometimes because we get triggered or because we have insecurities, but ultimately everybody has a good heart that they want love. So give love. And when you give love, and maybe it has nothing to do with finance, but I really think it has to do with life and just being a good human is just give love, smile and don't try to be cool. Just love and live, and you'll live a great life. At least that's what I think. I
love those 3 wise pieces of wisdom that you've shared with us. Thank you so much, Alex. That was an amazing quality time I spent with you today, and I'm really, really grateful for this time. Is there anything else you want to add to or share with the audience before we end? I
feel like I've already spoken. I've already spoken a lot, but I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity, Aisha. I think for anybody who's listening, if they want to go out and do something different with their lives, they should feel free to do it. They shouldn't feel like they have to hold back because they want to please other people. Let go of what people expect of you, and I'd be happy to talk more if people want to reach out and just have a chat. They can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. They can find me on my email. I don't know, maybe there's a way if you can send people my email if they want. I'm always happy to chat. My handle is Alex Moneton on literally everything, and they can just find me. And I'm always happy to chat and share experiences. And I do some mentoring programs for younger men mostly, but I'm happy to help women as well. It's just because I guess I get more men who ask me, but I'm always happy to help and kind of help them help people who are looking for something.
Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you for joining me today, everyone. To automatically receive the latest episode, please subscribe. And if you'd like to support the show, please share with one friend that you can help. And if you find it helpful, then please leave a review and comment on who you would also like to see as a guest in the future episodes. You can also message me directly on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Dr. Aisha Al Sheikh at DrAishaAlSheikh. Keep working on your dreams to make them reality. And have a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the world.